Well, good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday, September 30th, 2014, and it looks like we actually might be live, and which is a good thing. So it is a froggy morning here in Indianapolis, but it's supposed to be another beautiful day, reaching up into the 80s, expecting some rain going on towards the end of this week to drop us down into that awesome fall weather, back into the 60s again. So, with me this morning, so that way you guys don't have to just listen to me yak on all day, is a good friend of mine, Susan, who is also known as the Deer Farmer's Wife. You've seen her on a few times before, but hopefully she's going to be a regular, so that way we can get some conversation going. But good morning, Susan. How are you?
Good morning, Sunshine. I am lovely. How are you?
Do you have your coffee yet today?
Oh, heck yeah. It's a little nipply this morning, so yeah.
Yeah, that it is. I really enjoy this weather. It's getting a little too warm during the day, though.
It is. When the trees start turning, it better be sweatshirt weather. I'm not happy.
Yeah. Well, the nights, though, are really, it's quilt weather going on, snuggling weather. But
yeah.
How have you been?
I am just lovely. I'm super excited. Tomorrow's one of my favorite days of the year.
What is that?
Opening day here in Indiana, so yeah.
Oh, yeah, September 1st is opening day?
October 1st day, but yes. You're a month behind.
See how that works?
Yeah.
That's okay, because I had to think about this morning announcing that it wasn't August anymore. This year has really gone by fast.
It has. You know, we were just talking about that. Yesterday was my oldest 18th birthday, and, you know, you sneeze and holy cow, life happens just a little bit.
Yeah, well, there's been a lot going on this year. That there has, between trying to keep up with the news and just having a life and trying, you know, like most people out there, trying to figure out, you know, what we can do better to be ready for whatever's coming up. And there's so much coming in all directions, you know. And, you know, in your opinion, is that because we're so connected now with Facebook and everything else, or do you think we have cause to be concerned because of, like you know, you can hear about all the volcanoes, the tornadoes, and, you know, everything else that's going on out there in the world immediately, versus when our parents, or even, well, maybe not you, but, you know, way back before Facebook and cell phones and all that, when I was growing up, you didn't have all this information that's so easily accessible. All right. So yeah, are we setting ourselves up for panic attacks here because of all the information we can get our hands on?
I don't know if it's a panic attack. I don't know. I think a lot of people do panic a lot, and I know, oh my gosh, there's just so much, you know, between the weather and, you know, our friends across the seas, but I think we've also put our nose more into places necessarily where it shouldn't belong to. So, you know, you sit back and you watch the news, and, you know, what part do you believe? What part of it's real? What part of it are we not seeing? You know, we've talked about that too. When they're focusing on one thing, what are we not seeing? You know.
So what's high on your list right now of stuff to pay attention to?
Oh, for us right now, I think it's more getting ready for winter. After last winter, how, you know, bad it was in our area. And, you know, we had our county closed for 3 and 4 days at a time, multiple times. You know, being here on the farm, making sure that we stocked up on hay and food and for the animals plus us, and getting wood and just all that type of stuff together. That's my first priority and concern.
Yeah, I think you'd have to be living under a rock to not realize and see all the the hoopla about this winter supposed to be worse than last winter, and we had record snowfall here in Indianapolis last year. So I'm not quite sure how the hell we're going to get through all that.
Yeah, I think it was worse because here it would snow and then melt and do a layer of ice, and then snow and then melt and a layer of ice, and we had layers and layers of that. And that was what was so rough. And it was just so cold.
Yeah. Personally, I look forward to a few days off snuggled under the blankets. I think that would be great. But a lot of people out there would be in a whole world of hurt. And I have seen a lot more people ask questions and come to the dark side, into the preparedness world, because they realize maybe, Doomsday Prepper doesn't do a whole lot for, what we're trying to achieve out there. But a lot of people are starting to ask questions and decide that, hey, maybe I should put up a little bit of extra food or, get a couple jugs of water to have in the house.
Oh, absolutely. We just had a friend of ours come over. I mean, we've been friends with her for about a year or so. She's a young mom, got 2 kids or whatever. And she just, the farmer and I were sitting in the living room with her, and she's like, I just feel like I need to prep for something. And, it's like, oh, great. And I jokingly told her, I said, you took the blue pill. Welcome to the dark side. Because people are starting to wake up. And, I remember I didn't do any of this stuff until I met, Dennis, basically. And he didn't push with anything. I was one, you remember, when I finally figured out what I needed to do, I was a total hot mess. So I don't have it.
What would you suggest if somebody came up to you and said, hey, I see what's going on, and just in the news today, it says China is going to start direct currency trading with the euro, which isn't going to do us a whole lot of good over here at all. So between all of the theories out there on the collapse of the United States, what would you suggest people start out with? How do you think they should, begin their steps in preparedness?
Well, first of all, realize you're not going to be at the same place that people like you who have been doing this for years are at. And that took a lot for me to realize that, because I was, when we were hanging out with all kinds of people, when I was, oh, they're doing this, I have to do this. Well, they're doing this, I have to do this. You need to take a step back and breathe, first of all. I remember how many times you told me that. You need to see where your family's at, financially. Because you can't go and just start dropping hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And if you can, great. But the majority of people can. On, juicers and steamers and, non-electrical stuff and camping stuff. And even with bug-out bags. I mean, you can't go spend all this money on stuff thinking you're going to be where everybody else is.
You're just going to have a house full of stuff that you're not even going to know how to use.
Exactly. Start off small. Most people think of the big picture on why they need to prep, but how about the little stuff? You are out of work because you get hurt or you lose your job, things like that. Just having a little bit of a stockpile of the basic necessities is a wonderful place to start.
And if you live, we were talking about this last night, if you live in Indiana, you probably don't need to prepare for a hurricane.
Absolutely.
Now, I have seen one come through here, but not at the full force that it hit the coast. So, I mean, by the time it did get up to us, it was nothing but rain, just a lot of heavy rain. So flooding would be an issue that we would have to deal with, something like that. But it don't, like you said, don't hop on the bandwagon with every newfound, oh my gosh, the world is going to end thing that's going on out there. You need to, like you said, take a deep breath, take a step back, sit down, get a piece of paper and a pen, and sit down and figure out what's going to really impact your family the hardest.
Absolutely. And when you're making your bag, if you feel it necessary to make one, be realistic on the items, because, it's you. You're going to have to carry this bag.
And don't bug out if you have nowhere to go. Well, I mean, you're just going to die, or come up, do you want to really drag your family out, your kids out to some place where you don't know if there's, a place to go to on the other end? And granted, in certain circumstances, you might not have a choice. If you live around a nuclear power plant and it decides it's going to, go off, you might not have a choice. I know the wildfires in and around Nevada, California, in that area. I mean, you might not have a choice. But don't hop on that bandwagon of, well, I'm a prepper, I'm going to bug out, and not realize that you have some place to go to on the other end. So if you do, great. If you don't, bugging in might be the best option that you have if you can do that.
Oh, absolutely. And I love all my Facebook groups, and I'm not going to pick on any of them, but there's one group that if I need my chuckle for the day, I kind of get on it. And one of the ladies said, well, I think I'll be okay because I watched The Walking Dead and Doomsday Preppers. I think I know how to handle myself.
Hey, I have nothing against The Walking Dead. So
I don't
everybody
either.
knows my fetish with The Walking Dead. But, and I rag on Doomsday Prepper a lot because of reality. Has it brought people into and opened their eyes? Yeah, it has. I'll give them that. It's brought a lot of people into that. So, it does have that good behind it. But is it reality? No. Mm-hmm. One show that I have been watching that seems to be picking up speed because it is more reality based and it's more teaching, which is what, when I was approached by Doomsday Preppers a long time ago, I told them that's what I wanted, was a show more like this, because it makes sense, and that's Creek Stewart's new show, That Guy's in the Woods, over on the Weather Channel. So if you haven't gotten to see that, check it out. But he takes 3 guys who have very little experience whatsoever in survival, and he takes them out into the woods, and he teaches them things. I think the last show they had on, he taught them how to catch a wild boar out in the woods and, kill it and cook it. And he goes through like a day of teaching them how to survive and things they need to look for and building a shelter and things like that. And then he leaves them there overnight to see how well they would do. And, he's from here in the Indianapolis area. He has his home base here up in Anderson, I believe. And he has a school up there that he used to teach from. I'm sure he's quite busy now, so I'm not sure how often he does that now. But, the man's got some skills. Is he as, proficient as some of these other guys? I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and get into semantics about that. But, it's more reality-based, and it's more teaching you those little skills that you're going to need in order to survive if you do happen to get stuck out in the woods with nothing. So... And I shouldn't say with nothing, because he does give them each a backpack, I believe, with some tools of the trade in there. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, even I think if you watch Doomsday Preppers, you can learn what not to do in some cases, which can be just as powerful.
Very true.
You know what I mean? But they do have some good ideas. There was the one where they were talking about bugging in and, the wood shutter things that they made to go over their windows. If you do stuff like that, there are good
pieces of parts. So you have to glean from it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think you have to do that with anything. You need
Very
to
true.
figure out with your family, okay, if we stay here, what, and if you feel like, that there's going to be an issue, okay, well, what issues, if we stay here, do we need to figure out to fix or take care of? And something like that's always a good idea.
But I think you hit the nail on the head when you first said, take a deep breath, take a step back. Mm-hmm. And, one thing people don't realize is, and I've said this a million times, all of that fancy stuff that you buy can be instantly taken away from you. And, the first place I think of is Moore, Oklahoma. We saw where a town used to be just completely demolished and nothing there but bare dirt. So your preps can easily, all of those tangible assets can easily be taken from you. So, your first thing should be building your knowledge base. And that's free.
Yeah. When we were talking last Tuesday about, police going supposedly in areas looking for some of these groups of people. Well, with doing that, part of that could be a possibility. I'm not saying it is, so nobody freak out. If they did martial law to start implicating some of those practices, if you look at the martial laws, they can come in and take all of your prep.
If they want to, yes, they can.
And then what are you going to do? You spent thousands of dollars on those buckets of food that aren't going to do you any good.
And I've seen a lot of people say, they could come in, they could try and take whatever they want to, blah, 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 blah. If you've got 30 guys standing in your yard with ARs and who knows what else, really you're gonna stay in your house with a gun and defend some food preps? Really? I know it's nice to, think you got some balls and all of that, but when it comes to defending your family and making sure they survive, I'm not sure I would have the wherewithal to, put my family through a potential gunfight with law enforcement. To me, that's just stupid.
Well, you've got feelings for your family, they don't. So for them to take their aggression out because you're showing that you're being helpful, they're going to have just cause in their brain.
Yeah. And there are other options, too, for martial law.
Absolutely.
I know it's been discussed with this Ebola issue going around, and I know I saw it in the news, and it has not, to my knowledge, been confirmed yet, but a possible Ebola case in Texas that hit the news yesterday. But like I said, I don't know, it hasn't been confirmed to my knowledge where it came from to begin with, or if it's actually legit. They just said that the person is showing signs of Ebola, and they have them quarantined, but who knows who they came in contact before they got there. But, right there is potential for a shelter-in opportunity. And a lot of people, can they even shelter in for a week? How about 21 days, which is the incubation period for Ebola? In Sierra Leone, in Africa, where this is going on, they quarantine everyone in for 3 days, which I don't know the thought process behind 3 days when this thing takes 21 days, but whatever. Somebody made that decision. But can the average American out there shelter in place for 21 days? Let alone 3 days.
No.
3 days, they're going to start going antsy and wondering how they're going to order pizza.
Well, it's easier, and I guess this probably sounds ignorant on my part. I think it's easier for people like us to do it than compared to in a bigger city like New York when they're sitting in here in these apartments stacked on top of each other with little bitty refrigerators. They don't even have a full-size kitchen. Who don't think about it, they eat out more than what they're supposed to.
Well,
I don't see it happening.
And you have a point there. I can easily go to the grocery store here and load up my truck and go to Sam's Club and get whatever I want, 40 cases of water at a time. We talked to my mother-in-law when Hurricane Sandy was coming through. When, we were trying to prep her ahead of time because she refused to leave. And she lives in Brooklyn, New York. And, finally talked her into, she finally went and got water, so she called us. She was all excited. Hey, I've got water. And, well, how much did you get? Now, mind you, there's probably 5 or 6 people that live in her apartment. She got a case of water. And it's like, it's better than nothing, but the mindset between, that and where we're at is hugely different. Like you said, she has to walk home because they don't, she has a vehicle, but it's so expensive to own an automobile in New York City that, a lot of people don't have them. So whatever they purchase, they have to walk home. Plus, it's like living in the middle of an island, you only can get, the grocery stores in New York, unless you go to certain spots, are little C stores, convenience stores like we see here, like a Dairy Mart, or I don't even know if Dairy Mart still exists, but, one of these little gas station convenience stores.
Wiki Mint.
So hugely different dealing with what they deal with and what we do. But yeah, she thought she was doing good with a case of water.
You don't say.
I think the aliens have landed at my house.
Or the mothership.
Well, there's a whole nother thing to prep for, right?
Oh, my word. I don't even want to get into that one.
The aliens are landing and coming for us.
We've got enough to deal with on a daily basis, I think.
But do you think the social media, like Facebook and stuff, creates a bit of hysteria, panic in people nowadays?
I think people take off with a story. They read part of it and they understand it as being something and then run with it. You know, and it can get scary, especially if you are just starting out and you don't know what half of it means. You don't know what to believe, what not to believe. So yeah, you freak out, you know. I wouldn't say I'm not concerned or worried. I'm more waiting. Does that make sense? I'm waiting for the next thing to happen because, I mean, with all the groups that are fighting and how much the United States has their nose in everything, you know, we're not the most loved country in this world. Even at home, you know, that eventually something's going to break.
Yeah.
It's just what first? Is it the economy? Is it...
Well, I question, you know, this ISIS thing personally, and how much of it's being covered up right now so that way we don't panic. I've heard reports of other attacks besides the two in Oklahoma that are not probably going to hit media because let's just say that the powers that be don't want racial profiling to go on, which I think is just absurd, you know, and you know, I don't know what conversations have been had behind closed doors to make that happen, but to classify this beheading in Oklahoma as workplace violence is just beyond reason. I mean, just unfathomable in my opinion. I
agree. And I think it's too close to everything else that's going on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I posted this morning, and this happened down around Orlando. Let me get over to the blue page here. Okay, so right before I posted about the China going to the euro, this happened in Volusia County, something like that. And come on. I know it's early. Which is down around Orlando someplace. Ormond Beach, Florida. 2 men are facing charges after Volusia County deputies said they started a fight at a bar Wednesday night. Staff at the Just Beachy Bar on Ocean Shore Boulevard claimed they refused to serve alcohol to 54-year-old, and I'm going to hack this up. Is it Faisal al-Baghdadi and 30-year-old Ahmed Hindi as they walked into the bar already drunk. I need cops at Just Beachy Peckers Pub immediately. I got a huge fight going. I mean, they're tearing, and it says expletive, up. The caller told 911 dispatchers. We wouldn't even serve him when he came in. He was so drunk. Deputies said that's when the men got angry and attacked the customers. They're using chairs and everything else, the caller told dispatchers. Deputies said the men smashed 6 bar stools, threw several glasses that cut one woman in the eye, and beat up a couple of men. At one point, the fight got so out of control, the dispatcher couldn't get a hold of the caller. The men took off before the deputies arrived, but the caller was able to get their tag number and the description of their car. Ormond Beach police then quickly tracked down the car and arrested the men. Now, this is the part that bothers me. It says the arrest report showed that not only did Hindi deny initiating the bar fight, deputies said al-Baghdadi was uncooperative and threatened to, and this is in quotes, kidnap an American and behead him once he was released from jail, unquote. Both men faced criminal mischief and battery charges. The other customers were not seriously injured. However, the men allegedly caused more than $1,200 in damage. And I guarantee you this isn't the only instance of this. But, you know, when you start making allegations that you're going to kidnap Americans, whether or not, you know, this group had any intention of doing that other than to run their mouth about it, we have so many stupid people out there that are just going to hop on that bandwagon and say, oh, I'm a Muslim. I'm going to go do what they just announced on the news. So I'm going to start kidnapping Americans and cutting their heads off.
Now, see, I'm worried about the other end of the stick.
What's that?
I'm worried about the people seeing someone that looks like someone with dark skin and darker hair and just be like, you know what? You're all the same, and then start taking matters into their hands, whether they're doing anything or not.
Well, you know, I've thought about that. I really have. But you know what, damn it, the rest of these non-radical Muslims out there need to step up and say, hey, this isn't what we're about. You know, I have my own thought process on that whole thing to begin with. But you know, if they're not about that, why haven't we heard from them? Why haven't we heard from the ones that are standing up against ISIS and saying this is wrong? For instance, this case in Oklahoma, from what I understand, and it's been reported on the news with pictures, I mean, with actual proof, that, you know, once this guy was arrested out there, the rest of the Muslims that worked in the factory out there gathered around and did nothing but chant Ali Akbar.
Oh, geez.
That's not how you, you know, clear your religion, you know. At least when, you know, on the Christian side of it, when this, what's that fanatical group that goes around and terrorized people at funerals. And I'm not talking, they weren't killing people or beheading them. They were just making an ass of themselves. At least people stood up to them. You know, that are of the same religion. And I'm air quoting that.
I know. I see things being very difficult in the next coming months because of all of this. I think so much more of it's going to come to light, and it's going to be one of those, you know, we've got enough people in this country with their own private stash of everything to just not want to take it at all, you know, and take stuff into their own hands.
Oh, see, now this is why I need to pay attention to the chat room.
Westboro.
Sharon from the Trailer Park Home Center, Westboro. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, where are they at? Why aren't the rest of the people standing up and saying, no, this isn't right? And she said that the second case in Oklahoma with the nursing home, the guy said he was threatening to behead someone in the nursing home right after the actual one that where the guy beheaded the woman. I guess she said that he's coming out now and saying that he was just joking. So...
You don't joke about that stuff.
No, I mean, there's certain things you do joke about. This isn't one of them. People's nerves are all on edge right now. And honestly, the ones that we've talked about so far this morning, these aren't the only ones going on out there.
No, of course not. But see, like where we are, I mean, we're, 3 hours from you? I think we figured out when you came up, something like that. You know, we don't hear a lot of that stuff. We don't see a lot of that stuff on the news. You know, our show is very, like the news reports and stuff are very quiet about, you know, that type of stuff, big time. And, you know, you talk about it, we were outside talking to the neighbors who are Amish. They had no clue what any of it was.
No. And, you know, how many times do I wish I could go back to living that kind of a life, quite honestly. You know, I think about, you know, when I was growing up and I was oblivious to anything outside, you know, the swing set area of my yard.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I'd go out in the woods for hours and just spend time out there and just, you know, and now it's like, I don't know if I could step away. And I don't know, quite honestly, if there's a place to step away to.
Not really.
I mean, it's just all over the place. So, I'm trying to do two things at once this morning, and it's bad enough I'm trying to think and use my tongue at the same time. But, yeah, I mean, people, and they might not have a full freak on going out right now. I mean, there are some people out there that do, but everybody's nerves are on edge, and it to me it just seems like all it's going to take is one thing, and everybody is going to just there's going to be mass hysteria. I know ISIS has been reported in the St. Louis area with this whole Ferguson riot issue thing that's still going on. If you haven't been paying attention out there, people, that thing hasn't died down at all, and is still quite active, and a lot of stuff is still going on. I mean, there's plenty of live feed if you want to check it out going on. Just Google it. I was watching some of it over the weekend, and actually a police officer, and I don't know the details of this, female police officer got shot in the elbow over the weekend by someone. So, but from what I understand, plenty of ISIS activity in the area down that way. So, a lot of the people that actually live there say that the rioters aren't even from the area. They're being brought in to instigate. So, imagine that going on in your town.
That'd be funny. Wow. I don't mean that in a bad way.
Where you live, yeah.
That would be really funny. But yeah, I think that's why we need to stop and get back to the basics and get back to why we do what we do. You know, we need to go through and make sure we've got the things we need. You know, we've got family plans. We've got, that type of stuff. And, we need to talk to people and get people as educated as we can. So when stuff does happen, that people are more ready than what they are.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not a matter of you need tactical gear and, the best of everything. This is a matter of just being able, like I said earlier, to shelter in, not for 3 days. 3 days, I mean, that's a start. Don't get me wrong. But, at least a month would be good, and don't go out and buy the fancy-dancy freeze-dried packages of you can survive for a year off of this. Oh, you probably could if you know how to use the stuff to begin with, but it's going to take a lot of water in order to cook that. It's going to affect how your body is just going to be miserable for a while. But, take a piece of paper and a pen, the same one that we used earlier, and sit down and figure out what your family actually eats. If you've got a child and that only eats macaroni and cheese, then damn it, buy them macaroni and cheese. This is going to be stressful enough. You don't want your family. Meals should be the last thing that you worry about if something like anything we've talked about happens. So sit down, write out for a week, 7 breakfast, 7 lunch, 7 dinner, get a tote, and start gathering the items that you need for that. Write out the recipes, how to cook this, what are the meals, what are all these ingredients for. Tape that, put that in the inside of the tote, because heaven forbid something happens to you, you're going to need your family to know what you prepared here for them to survive.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. And it's little things. Don't think that you need to go spend your entire monthly grocery budget on buying extra food. When you go to the store, buy an extra 1 or 2 things. Do it gradually. Don't overstress that already stressed out, grocery money. Because so many people are living like that, and they're thinking, well, I'm already, maxed out. I don't have the money to do something else.
Well, I mean, between the droughts that are going on in California, this past winter we saw all of the cattle that were killed with the freak snowstorms up through Montana and that area. the price of groceries are not going to come down. They're only going to increase. And even if the price doesn't increase, I don't know, I'm sure you've noticed, but the packaging has gotten smaller.
Oh my gosh, we were just talking about that. Mom went to go buy coffee at Walmart, and she normally got one size, and they didn't have the size. They had a smaller size at the same price.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just, we don't like to get meat and stuff from that place because I hate that place anyway. And I will gladly say I freaking hate Walmart with a passion.
Yeah.
Anyway, with that being said, I walked over to the meat department just to look. Oh my gosh, a pack of hamburger meat. I mean, granted it was a couple pounds, not much. Was $27.
Yeah, and it's probably all pink slime anyways.
Yeah, and there was a roast, and it was $32, and the roast is going to cook halfway down anyway.
Well, I don't know if a lot of people realize this, but if you go or you get to know a farmer who owns a dairy farm, when their cows give birth, if it's a male, a lot of times they'll give those away for free because they don't need them. So it might be an option for you and your family for a cheap source of meat. I know my aunt and uncle did that and continue to do that. Good friends with a farmer. Mm-hmm. And like I said, if they have a male cow that's born, they will give it away to them for free.
Yeah, and you live in the city, obviously, you can't do something like that. But you can find other ways. I mean, there are butcher shops. There are other places where you can get real meat. Go grab a whole bunch of it and can it. I mean, if you don't have the space in your freezer or refrigerator, and there's tons of different websites and how-tos and YouTube videos on how to can meat and everything else. I mean, there's always options.
Yeah, technology has improved greatly.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know when the last time I heard of someone's canner blowing up or anything like that. So I have a couple All-Americans that I absolutely love, and even for leftovers. I mean, how many people throw leftovers away when all you have to do is, depending on what it is, don't get me wrong, it's frowned upon for any kind of dairy or anything with dairy in it to be canned. But, leftovers, throw them in the freezer, throw them in, I made chili, not last weekend, the weekend before, because usually my kids come over, but they're packing because they're moving, and so they didn't make it. But before I found out, I had made a big pot of chili. Well, when there's only 3 of us, you don't use that much. So I end up canning the rest of it. So now I have chili that I can pull out anytime through the winter and have an instant meal.
Absolutely. Well, and one of the things that we talk about, when I've got the page up and going, which we don't have it going right now, and we'll get that going back up eventually. Life's just been too crazy here on the farm. When you have a meal, try to look at it to get 2 meals out of that one meal. Like we did country-style ham and potatoes. Well, then I turned around and made potato ham soup.
So now I'm getting hungry because I haven't had breakfast yet.
But, try to think of things like that. Try to get a dual purpose out of it.
And look for alternatives to food that maybe you haven't thought about. You are putting together a website and have been known for quite a while now as the Deer Farmer's Wife. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if people understand, you and your husband, your family, actually own a deer farm. So why don't you explain to people what exactly that is if they can't wrap their mind around it?
It's actually a funny story how we even got it started. Obviously, we hunt and are all about that, but we don't waste anything with an animal. That's like my biggest pet peeve. And then the deer farmer went to an Amish guy's house after one of the hunts, and they were all sitting around joking, and it was at night, so he didn't notice. And the guy's like, yeah, I got deer in the backyard. Well, he just got all excited thinking they were going to go do some more hunting. And no, the guy actually had a deer farm. And he came home and did all the research, and he's like, "Hey, let's start this." And I'm like, "Okay." Boy, if I knew then what I know now. You have to purchase deer from another farmer. In Indiana, especially, there's lots of laws, and those are even changing. You have to get inspections from the DNR and the ag department, and all kinds of things. And so we did that. We started off with 2 does, and now I think we have like 37 deer. We've got bucks and does, and we do sell the bucks. That's part of how we have to recoup some of the money that we put into it. And the does we butcher for our meat for consumption. We donate meat to the butcher shops in town, and then they donate, the food out too and stuff like that. And it is a wonderful thing. We do bottle feed our fawns. We leave them on their mom for about 36 hours because we want them to get the nourishment and the colostrum. And the reason we do that is not because we think we're better than their mothers, taking care of them, obviously we're not. But they are still a domesticated wild animal, but they are a wild animal. And so to make them easier to handle, having that bottle feeding, that there's a really big connection with the animals and stuff, to be able to check them and when we have to do testing and things like that and make sure that they're fine and, just to be able to go, I can go outside right now and go into my buck pen and brush a buck. They're in rut season still, and you have to be very careful. But they're just my big babies, and I know their purpose. And I'll still put a bullet in one of their heads for food, but that's what we do.
I was gonna say, how do you reply to people? And I've seen this before in lots of places. To people that are like, "Oh my goodness, how can you do that? That's a wild animal." And if you think about it, it's no different than raising, beef cows or anything like that. Mm-hmm. How do you reply to people that talk about how inhumane you are and you should just buy your meat from Walmart?
We had this conversation this morning. I had a lady, frequently, when they find out what we do, people go off on me saying, how can you shoot an animal? Don't you know they have meat at Walmart? Well, how the heck do you think they get meat besides the pink slime?
Actually, what you do is more humane than how Walmart probably gets their meat.
Oh, absolutely. The thing is, if you go into one of my pens right now, they've got soup, and especially Indiana, Michigan with the blue tongue things, there's lots of diseases going on that, deer suffer horribly if you know anything about blue tongue. It's a horrible, horrible disease, and I feel so bad for them. My animals are healthy. They're fed. They're huge. They look like little piglets out there running around.
Yeah, and they're not stuck in small cages. I know we've talked about and seen, the horror stories. I have chickens. You have chickens. We take care of our chickens. They're, given food, and they're almost to the degree that they're pets because we don't, we have meat chickens, but the majority are raised for eggs. So you treat the chickens properly because what you put into the chicken is what comes out in the egg. So you're eating that egg. You want to make sure that you put good things into the chicken. But you see the horror stories on the news about these chicken farms out there where you've got, and it's not just chickens. It's pigs and cows and you name it. All squashed together into these tiny pens and fed so many chemicals. You don't know what you're eating.
Yeah. See, and our animals, they're in acre-sized pens. They've got tons of room. When we went through, we left so much, it was a wooded lot, and we left all the trees and all the underbrush and all that stuff because we wanted them to have a semi-natural environment for them. They're fed non-GMO food, 100%, because I freak out about that. We feed them, oh my gosh, right now, leftover tomatoes and stuff out of the garden. They get kale, they get kelp, they get oh my gosh, carrots. I mean, they get so much other stuff that's all good for them to make sure that they have a balanced diet. And especially in the winter, when they can't get to the grass and stuff like that, we make sure that they still get that forage stuff in their system. But
do you know the difference? And I don't, so I'm asking. How much? Well, I mean, it's a no-brainer to compare the beef that you buy at Walmart versus what you have with the deer, just because of the chemicals and the pink slime and all of that out there. But do you know how much healthier deer meat is compared to maybe to beef or anything else?
Oh, absolutely. They say it's actually one of the best meats you can eat because it doesn't have the fat and everything in it. You actually have to add some fat to venison when you cook it, especially if you fry it. The one thing you do have to remember, though, when you cook venison, say you have 2 pounds, normally it cooks down to about 1.5 to a pound. I mean, it really cooks itself down. But my deer tastes different than if we go out and kill a deer in the wild because their diet's different.
So it's like rabbits, because wild rabbit is a lot stronger, and you get domesticated rabbit or the tame rabbit, and it's almost it tastes like chicken.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't as far goes to say it tastes like beef, but our meat does not have a gamey taste to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And if you guys, I mean, if you hunt or if you're starting to hunt, and if you seriously need recipes, I mean, you can find the Deer Farmer's Wife page on Facebook. Like I said, I'm not on it a lot right now because we are so busy around the farm, but we're going to be getting all of that back and going. We're doing videos and stuff like that at the moment. I've got tons of recipes. There are ways to get a gamey taste out of almost any meat. I mean, tomato sauce. Soak it in tomato sauce, tomato paste. The acid in it will break down tough meat. But, there's so many different ways around it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember, actually, when I was growing up, we had sat down, and I was probably, I'm going to say 13, 12 at the time, somewhere around in that area, and we had sat down to dinner. And I grew up on a farm in Ohio, and my parents divorced when I was pretty young, and I had gone to live with my dad on the farm. And we sat down at dinner, and, we had the roast and the potatoes and, all of that. And we get done with dinner, and my dad was like, well, how'd you like the beef roast? And honestly, it tasted a little off, but didn't think anything about it. It was a little more stringy than typically what we had. And this is horrible, and I'll never forget this for the rest of my life. My dad said, well, that was a goat. So if you've never had goat before, it does taste a lot like beef, and it is a little stringier. But people just can't wrap their heads around, eating those animals that we don't typically think of as meat animals. There's a whole breed of animals out there that can be utilized for meat, such as rabbits and goats. But doing it the way my dad did, I wouldn't suggest that.
No. It's people know when they're coming to our house. They always ask, "Okay, before you cook dinner, what are you cooking it with?" Because they know we use a lot of the deer meat. But I've had squirrel. I mean, we've talked about
squirrel is awesome.
Squirrel and wild rabbit and all these different things, alligator, whatever. And I don't think you should say you won't ever eat something until you try it. I really do. I think it will surprise you. I love grilling squirrel, just stripping it down and then laying it flat like you would a chicken, and just putting some seasoning on it and grilling it. I think that's absolutely amazing.
I think people just need to open their minds up to it. For those that eat meat, if you're a vegetarian, that's a whole nother issue. But
Yes,
people don't realize, they think that we eat beef and chicken. They think that's the only things that are out, and pork. bacon.
Mm-hmm.
But those are really the only three, things out there that we should be eating. Whereas they open up their minds to it, and actually start digging into it. One thing I learned through my naturopathy classes, cow's milk isn't good for you.
Neither is beef.
Yeah, and it's very acidic. But on the other hand, goat's milk is very alkaline and actually is better for your body, way better for your body than cow's milk is.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do any research, especially when both my parents passed away from cancer, so it's important to me to find out as much as I can. And, my dad passed away when he was 48, which is my age now. So it has a tendency to mess with your mind a little bit, it's like, so trying to, educate yourself as much as possible on, what causes cancer, what is it, all those kind of things. And when it was a little shocking for me specifically because I grew up having milk cows and things like that. We also had goats and drank goat's milk. But to learn how bad cow's milk is for you and how between the acid and the alkaline affects your body and the chemistry in your body and how that affects cancer and things like that, it's just a little startling.
Oh, absolutely. When Mom had her breast cancer and they did her biopsy, and the stuff that came back from it, and it was hormones. And when they started looking at different things, the stuff that they gave her, the estrogen, that's a hormone-based drug.
Well, yeah, you can't put that stuff into the animal and not expect it. The animal is not a filter. It's not going, what you put in is going to come out into the stuff that we eat.
Exactly. And that's what's scary for me. And my youngest, Lord love her, she butchers right alongside me. My youngest, and she has no qualms about it. And we go to the store and she looks at chicken breast and she's like, Mom, that's not any kind of chicken breast that's not what they look like. If there is a chicken that is that big, that's got that big of a chicken breast on it, Lord help it. What I mean?
Oh yeah. The actual real food that you can raise yourself is so different than what you buy in the store.
Yeah.
You get some of those X-Rocks chickens. Have you seen those? Those Cornish X-Rock. They're like small turkeys.
Oh yeah. But it just, when you think of the uneducated person, but most times it's not even their fault they're uneducated.
And I was going to say, it's not necessarily that they're stupid. It's the fact that they only are doing with what they know about. So open, one of the first things I talk about in preparedness is the mindset. Open your mind, and learn things. It's just fascinating, some of the stuff that's out there.
Definitely. And, one of the things that, we read a lot, we discuss stuff. When you go to a grocery store, you should never go down an aisle to purchase anything. That's what this book says. You should only do the outskirts of the store because that's where the fresh fruits and the fresh vegetables and all that stuff is. Because anything that's processed is going to be in the middle of the store.
And now is a perfect time to get out to all the farmers markets and the orchards and stuff like that. If you do live in the city, get out to those because it is prime time right now. And if you know somebody that there's an overabundance with the weather that we've had, here, especially here in Indianapolis, these orchards and places like that have too much. And prices are really good. And some of them are just giving stuff away because they can't keep up with it.
No, I agree. Right now, especially up in this area, apples are in abundance right now. Which is really, really good. You can do so many things with apples.
Yeah.
You really can. And you can cook it with, if you've got pork, you can put it with pork. If you have venison, you can put it with venison. You can make apple pie fillers. You can make apple sauce. There's so many different things you can do.
And you brought up your kids being involved in this, and I know I've seen the flag people, you can't involve your kids in the murder of animals and stuff like that. I grew up on a farm. I've, watching porn movies since I was, sex education on a farm is a lot earlier than you get anywhere else, let's just say. So I learned about the birds and the bees not even with my parents involved sometimes because,
Oh, Lord.
I mean, animals are animals, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
And even now, you know, Eddie came from Brooklyn, New York, and so he's just fascinated. I mean, we have chairs out by where, or benches, they're not really chairs, by where the chickens are and stuff like that. And we'll just sit out there and talk and watch them because they're goofy. They each have their own personality. But, you know, getting kids involved and stuff like that. I was helping my dad. When I grew up, we had, thousands of rabbits. It was one thing. And my dad sold the meat as far as away as Japan. And if you're from, like, the Ohio area, if you know what trail bologna is, he used to have trail bologna made out of rabbit meat, which is a lot healthier for you and leaner than getting the trail bologna that's made out of beef. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I was helping him butcher rabbits, as far back as I can remember. You know, it was just a part of our life. But it's funny because when we moved here, you know, when my son was in public school system, we had some of his friends come over for birthday parties or whatever that have never seen a chicken before or a goat. And this is in, you know, what we would consider the Midwest, you know, so it's quite bizarre. But I didn't realize we're down to 2 minutes. This morning went fast.
It did.
We'll be back tonight, 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, to Place and Conflicted. And I do believe you're joining us then, too.
I wouldn't miss it.
Going to have a nap in the afternoon?
No, we've got to garden and get pulled up today.
Yeah, I've got to go to work, my real job. But thanks for coming on this morning. We're going to have to do this very often.
Oh, most definitely. I have learned so much from you, you know, over the few years, and I really enjoy passing it on, that's for sure.
Yeah, and seeing people become self-sufficient, taking the steps to do that, whether they're 100% self-sufficient or not, just getting them headed in that direction. It helps everybody, you know?
Yeah, it does. That's for sure.
But you guys have a great day out there. Good morning to everybody in the chat room. It looks like it's filling up, getting ready before the first cup coming up next.